Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. Hope you're having a great week. My name is Tony Roig. I am your host of this weekly podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about our bodies. We spend a lot of time on the podcast talking about the mind. Super important, obviously. But I've been rereading actually this book called Move Your DNA by Katie Bowman. She's a biomechanist. And just some takeaways in that I think are really interesting and I wanted to share with you. Because, as important as the mind is, you also got to have a body to play pickleball. It's not, we're not just sitting there punching a screen or moving things around a board. We actually have to move around a pickleball court, and the better our body is going to be, the better we're going to play. That's why I actually wrote an article as well called Your Body, Your Pickleball. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys some ideas about your body and how to think about it, maybe a little bit differently, and also encourage you to continue working on it, right? And how to think about it, again, a little bit differently than maybe you have in the past. As we dive into the podcast, we still have a few spots left in our New York camp coming up at the end of June. So if you care to join us in New York, please take advantage of that. It's going to be a lot of fun up there. Good food, hopefully some good weather, definitely some good pickleball. So, all right, let me dive into the subject we're going to be talking about again is our body. And again, the book's name is called Move Your DNA. It's by Katie Bowman is her name. The author's name. I read the book a couple years ago, really changed how I think about my body and moving and how you can potentially avoid injuries and things like that based on using the ideas in the book. So I wanted to share those with you. And generally speaking, her approach, Katie Bowman's approach in the book and in the way she explains things has a logical flow to it, right? Kind of like, and that resonated too, because that's the way that, we try and coach pickleball, right? Is explaining to you the logic of it, the framework, objectives, strategies, and shots, right? So we start with framework. So she sets up a framework of basically, that our body, the basic function of our bodies has evolved to move us from point A to point B in search of food. That really is the most basic function, right? That's our most basic need, is to eat and obviously drink water. So we need to have a vehicle, which is our body, to move us from point A to point B. The way we live now, right? Our modern way of living is a much more sedentary way of living than our ancestors did, right? Than the hunter-gatherers in our history did. If you think about the amount of time that we spend static versus the amount of time that we spend in motion, it's night and day compared to what it used to be. And in fact, I'm recording this podcast seated, right? I'm seated on a stool in front of a microphone in a room. And when I get done with this, I have to go sit in front of a computer to type some things and do some things like that, right? So my movement today is going to be very small. I did a little bit of housework this morning, some things I was working on in the laundry room. I went to the gym for a little bit, and that might be the extent of my movement today, other than, just getting around the house and things like that. So when you think about like the way that we move relative to how our bodies evolved, there's a mismatch there. And what she suggests is that this mismatch is in fact potentially the cause of many of our ailments, that limit our ability to fully enjoy ourselves or enjoy our bodies, right, throughout our life. And, why this is so important to us, it's important in pickleball, as I mentioned, right? We need our bodies to be able to do things on the pickleball court, to be able to hit the ball and move around. But it's also important for life, right? We basically have this one vehicle, our bodies, that we are going to, spend our time on earth in. So the better that our bodies are, the better that they feel, the more enjoyment we'll get out of our life and our pickleball. Now, what's really interesting about her approach is that it's not that it's easy to do what she suggests, but it's not as complicated as you might think it is, as long as you have some attention to it and some increased intentionality in how you approach it. And then, so what can you do, right? What can you do to improve your body using these concepts, or trying to avoid the mismatch between how we live now, the sedentary lifestyle, and how our bodies evolved? It's actually just to move. It's to have more movement in your daily life. Now, let's talk about what we mean by movement, or what she means by movement, and what we're trying to get at on movement here. It's movement is not the same as exercise. Okay. In other words, like whenever you're moving, you are in fact exercising, but exercising may not by itself be movement, not the type of movement that you need. And one way to think about it is like riding a bike, right? Now, riding a bike is a physical activity, right? You could ride a bike for 100 miles and you're going to get a lot of physical activity in riding the bike those 100 miles. But if you think about the type of movement that you're using in that biking, it's a very limited range of motion, right? It's a repetitive motion. It's, your legs are going up and down, and around as you push the bike along. You're seated in a certain position. Maybe you stand up once in a while, but most of the time you're going to be in a certain position as you travel on the bike. And you're also, one thing that she explains in the book really well is the idea of load, right? So, we think of Earth gravity as 1G, right? That's the standard gravity on Earth. That's how we think about it in terms of gravity. Right? It's 1G. If you're on the moon, it's like 0.3G or something like that. And if you're in a car going around a corner really fast or in a roller coaster, you might get to 3-4 Gs. So we are always subjected to 1G. So like walking, you're subjecting your bones to 1G of force or of load as you walk, right? On the pickleball court, you're exposing your bones and your muscles and your joints and everything to 1G of force as you move around the court. When you bike, you actually are not applying G's to your movement, right? To the force that you're exerting when you're biking, because you're sitting on a bike and you're pedaling the bike, as opposed to exerting that movement onto the earth. So the way that you move, the way that you load your body is really important to the type of movement that you do, as well as the range of motion that you engage in to get this idea of movement, to get this idea of what Katie Bowman refers to as nutritious movement. And I really like the way she explains in the book the idea of, let's say that you need 2,000 calories a day, right? 2,000 calories is your recommended daily allowance of caloric intake. You could, in theory, eat 2,000 calories of pasta, or 2,000 calories of potatoes, or 2,000 calories of Snickers bars, right? Is that a healthy 2,000 calories? I think you would agree the answer is no. You need some variety in there, right? You need maybe some vegetables, maybe some protein. You need some carbs. You need, different things in your diet. You need some macronutrients, things like that, to have a complete nutritious diet. It's the same thing with your movement. In order to have a complete, well-rounded movement, to have nutritious movement, you need to move in different ways. You need to articulate your joints in different ways. You need to load them differently and things like that. Now, we don't have it'd be unrealistic to say, okay, go live like a hunter-gatherer. So walk, 6 miles a day over different terrain, climb trees, go climb over rocks and things like that, which would be the full range of motion that your body's designed to do. But there are certain things that you can do to increase your range of motion and your movement now, to make your movement more nutritious. So like, even if you don't have access to like fresh vegetables in your movement, right? Maybe you can add, a can of green beans once in a while, or you can add, a different form of starch, or a different form of carb, right? To vary it up a little bit. Maybe you can throw in a half a banana once in a while to your movement, right? To your movement routine. Now I'm going to tell you the first thing that I would do if I was you is I would buy a copy of this book, Move Your DNA by Katie Bowman, KATYBOWMAN. We'll put a link down in the show notes. I'd get a copy of her book. I think it's $10 to $20. Great investment to learn more about your body, right? And potentially your health. Now, the next thing is being more attentive and intentional about your movement, about your about how you incorporate movement into your life, right? Not let it be like a side choice, and not let it be like, well, I'll move only, the times that I'm required to move. For instance, you have to move on a pickleball court. I get that, right? You can't not move on the pickleball court, but you can also move other times, right? So be more intentional about moving, and plan your movement, right? So, and I'm not talking here just about taking like a 10-minute walk, right? 10-minute walks are fine. So if that's all you can do that. But if you want to add more intentionality to it, are there times when you're driving somewhere, that you could instead maybe walk. And if you know me, those who know me, my friends, my family, they know that I love walking. So like if I can walk somewhere, I will likely walk there rather than catch a ride or than take an Uber or drive. Recently I was at the PPA in Atlanta, and I was about 35 minutes from the venue walking, and I walked there pretty much every day. I would shuttle back sometimes to the shuttle stop and then walk from there, which is about 20 minutes. So if I was tired, I would save the 15 minutes of walking sometimes. But I walked pretty much every day while I was there, and I felt great walking. So look at your situation and see, maybe like you're headed to a friend's house who's, 5 blocks away, right? Maybe don't drive there, maybe walk there, right? Maybe there's a store near you that you can go to pick up a, half gallon of milk. Take a backpack, walk to the store, throw the milk in the backpack. Just walking outside is so good for your entire body, for your entire chain of, when I say your chain, you'll understand when you read the book, but the chain that starts at your feet, dries up your whole body. It's just so good for all your ligaments, all your muscles, your bones, for everything. Just that extra movement, just the extra getting out there. It's also really good for your brain, right? Talking about the mind, because you're going back to the basic premise that the most important function of your body is to move from point A to point B to get you food. Think of how much brain power and how many nerve endings are associated with that function. If it's the most important function of your body, it's got to be a lot, right? So if you walk in the way that you're designed to walk, which is outdoor forward walking, you will be triggering all of these sensory parts of your brain and of your nerve endings and things like that otherwise lay dormant. So that is about being more attentive and intentional in your walking. And then the last thing I would suggest to you is you may have to rediscover some movement patterns. And this is normal, folks. This is very normal. As we get older, we lose balance, we lose some mobility. I've been seeing a couple of videos recently came across my feed about, folks learning how to jump, right? And these are adults learning how to jump because they don't remember how to jump. They don't know how to make their body move in the way to jump, even, 3-4 inches off the ground. And, actually, to be honest with you, when I saw the video, I was like, well, let me check myself, and I don't have a great jump. I can jump a little bit, but I probably, if I was going to jump higher than I can jump now, I'd probably have to work on it some to rediscover how to fire those muscles. And what happens is it's not that you did anything wrong. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just you haven't done it. And so, even take walking as an example, right? I mean, like there's a ton of videos on YouTube about how to walk. And it's not a joke. It's not a funny thing. It's just we don't know how to do certain things in the way that our bodies are designed. I myself probably don't walk as correctly as I could if I knew how to walk better, right? So there may be some things in here that you're going to want to rediscover about your movement, and don't feel ashamed. Don't feel like bad or less than because you need to do a little bit of work on this front. Put the work in. Why not? Why not, enjoy this one time, this one trip around the sun that we have, as well as we can, right? And not be held back by silly things like, I should know how to do that. I can just know how to do it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? Now there's 2 ways that I'm thinking about this that you could do it. One is I don't know that we use physical therapists enough in our lives. And here I'm talking about, obviously, you're welcome to see an orthopedic and things like that, but usually those strata of the healthcare field normally, or most of them, as far as I know, and as far as when I talk to folks and things like that, they're usually more dealing with like I need a knee replacement or I need a surgery or something like that. Whereas physical therapists are dealing more in the, like preventative kind of stuff, right? Like training you how to use your body, seeing how you're using your body mechanically, and determining if there's a problem with the way you're walking or things like that. For instance, like a lot of times when people have problems with their knees or have problems with their backs and things like that, it stems from the feet, right? I mean, there's a problem with the way their feet are moving, and so that problem with the feet then goes up the chain into the knee, into the back, and things like that. So one option is to find a physical therapist or someone trained like that in your area who can help you, figure out what's the best ways for you to move. If there's some areas that you could use some rediscovery and movement, help you out with those. I think it's a perfectly good thing to do. The other thing you can do is you can, if that's not available to you, whether there's no one in your area or just financially not something that you're in a position to do, then you're on a real full discovery mission yourself, right? Look at it. But here's my suggestion. Don't just follow the first thing you see, right? Either one, acquire enough knowledge for yourself that you can discern what's real and what's not. Or number two, find enough consensus in what you're looking at, right? Like, this doctor, I double checked them and they're from, Harvard School of Medicine, and here's what they're saying. And I saw 3 other videos from same kind of folks, and this is what they're saying. Okay, that makes sense to me. I'm going to start doing that. I do have to put a caveat here. I can't give you medical advice, right? Obviously over a podcast. And also I'm not trained in the medical field. But you can try and see if you can get the information yourself, or you can get professional help. Those are the 2 ways, but don't be ashamed about having to rediscover some movement things that you think you should already know how to do. Because listen, at the end of this, it's about you. It's about your life. It's about living the best life you can on and off the pickleball court, right? So on the pickleball court, you're going to play better. Off the pickleball court, you're going to feel better. You're going to move better. You're going to live better. Highly recommend you pick up a copy of the book, if nothing else, to get a different perspective or a fuller perspective maybe on how our bodies operate, how our bodies work, and how we evolved, and see if there's stuff that you can do that allows your body to have more of that nutritious movement, as Katie Bowman refers to it in her work. So, that's this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We went into the body, talked a little bit about the mind, but it's just so important, right? To live our lives as fully as we can while we're still here. So if you enjoyed the podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it. Really appreciate you doing so. If you want to check out our book, Pickleball Therapy, I'll put a link in the show notes as well. That's only about the mind, not about the body, but it'll help you out with that. And as always, if you enjoyed it, please share with your friends, because if you enjoyed the podcast, they probably will too. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time on our regular episode. Be well.